Hi, I'm Ning Yap.
Hi, I'm Michelle Yap. Welcome to ToastTalk with the Yappies. Today we are heading to the Central at Clarke Quay, where we're going to meet up with one of the partners at Matthew Chiong Partnership, who has assisted us in one of our recent cases.
Yeah, Michelle, I think this case is very dear to our heart because while we were actually assisting this client on the sales and purchase, in the process, one of the owners actually passed on. And because of that, right, we're very blessed to have Matthew Chiong to step in and give solutions almost immediately. And with this, I think it actually gives our clients more consolation, right?
Correct. In fact, Matthew Chiong and Partnership, they actually gave us very good support.
Yeah.
And they have a team of business development managers. And the one that we're going to meet up today is Jamie Lin.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, come Lin, let's go and meet her.
Come, let's go.
Hey, hi, Ning, Michelle. Hi, welcome to my office. Welcome to Matthew Chiong Partnership. Come, let me show you guys around.
Okay, sure.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Okay, so I leave it up to you guys for the discussion. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Stefan. Thank you so much for appearing in our ToastTalk with the Yappies. I think you are very busy, but we're very thankful for your time. Recently, I actually helped clients. This client's case is very close to our heart.
Yes.
Right? Because when we are helping them to sell the property and also to purchase the property, in the process, one of the owners actually passed on, and this actually caused the whole family really at a state like, what they should do. What are the things that they should take care, or what they should do to be more well prepared?
Oh, sure, of course. I think before jumping into the topic, we need to take a look at whether or not if a will was written insofar as dealing with the estate. So in the event that a will was written, right, we'll apply for probate. In the event that a will was not written, we'll apply for letter administration. And then obviously in the event of letter administration, assets will be distributed according to the Intestacy Act. Now, it's sometimes unfortunate things do happen and parties do die in the middle of a transaction. And then from there, we have to take a look as to how the property is being held, the holdings. So in the event where a husband and wife, the husband dies in the middle of a transaction and they were trying to purchase a property as a joint tenant, what will happen is that this joint tenancy per se will get rescinded by HDB as the joint tenancy no longer exists. Right, so in the event such a thing occurs, right, and let's say the widower, the widow wife wants to continue and carry on buying over that piece of property, she will need to provide evidence, proof of funds to HDB, and she will have to lodge an appeal to carry on with the transaction as a single buyer. And to that end, the lawyers on our side will write to HDB and provide a lawyer undertaking that we absolutely will and shall complete the probate or letter administration in order for this property to get transacted.
I think, Stephen, just now you mentioned about joint tenancy. So what if, let's say, the property is being purchased tenancy in common? Is there any difference?
No. Ultimately, when they purchase the property, right, it is by way of holding. So if a person dies, there is no tenancy in common to speak of.
Okay.
So the individual buyer, in order to carry on with the transaction, by and large, they need to provide proof of funds to show that they have the capacity to carry on with the transaction itself.
Okay, so in the event, let's say, if they do not have sufficient funds, they are not able to proceed with the purchase, does the seller has any, like for example, do they have any case against this buyer? Okay,
so I think ultimately, this goes the same for single buyer who suddenly dies, right? By and large, the seller does not have any right to compel the buyer to complete the transaction. But having said that, I do believe that an OTP will have been signed beforehand, and the OTP will be forfeited. So in a way, the seller has been protected in that sense.
Okay, another question is that, let's say for example, unfortunately, if the wife, who's a survivor now, also happens to be sick and is also diagnosed, they only have a couple of months to live, all right, and then having one of the daughter okay, who has no property at the moment, POA, power of attorney, has been passed on to the, or she appoint the daughter as the power of attorney. Okay, will that help as well in terms of the transactions?
What will happen is the daughter, through the power of attorney, the POA, will have the ability to complete the transaction for the mother. I mean, let's assume that she has the funds to complete. So what happens is the house will be completed, it will be bought under the mother's name, and if the mother does, touch wood, pass away, the property itself will be left to her estate to be distributed either through intestacy or through will, assuming that she has a will.
Okay,
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Right.
Then I think at least that's something helpful.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so now that we have talked about will, we have talked about POA, I think LPA is also something that's in most of our audience's mind. So would you be able to share with us maybe like distinctively what is the difference between the will, the POA and the LPA?
Sure, of course. A will is basically an instrument that will control your legacy and the conduct of the legacy after you pass on. Whereas the LPA is an instrument governing, which empowers the donee to govern the life of the donor in the event he becomes incapacitated, either through accident or stroke or otherwise. Whereas a power of attorney, by and large, is a stopgap measure that provides very specific powers to the trustee of the POA to do very specific things. And I do believe that for the purposes of agents like yourself, right, we are talking about the transaction, the buying and selling of a property. That's about it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but we do understand, you know, we have been sharing with a lot of our clients with regards to these three instruments.
right.
But apparently, I think somehow or other, you know, even though they know it's important, they still procrastinate on it.
Okay, seriously, Michelle, I think seriously, both of us,
Yes.
we are the culprit as well.
Yeah.
Okay, we actually procrastinated on our will, we procrastinated on our LPA. The only thing is that we haven't touched on the POA, right?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, no, POA no, only
Yes.
only those two.
Right. So
yeah.
of course, we have actually got Matthew Chiong Partnership to assist us on that. Because after seeing so many, incidents that happens, okay, so it caught us thinking as well. But what's your thought on this? Like people procrastinating on it?
Well, to my mind, I think at the very least, one should have an LPA assigned to themselves, because you really do not know what will happen to you day to day. But I think perhaps the best protection would be a will written in conjunction with the LPA. So the LPA will look after you while you are alive but incapacitated, and the will look after your legacy after you die. You see. Having said that, I think my personal experience when it comes to LPA and will, a lot of it boils down to cost. I mean, I have come across incidences where we have people with extraordinary amounts of money, and you know, when I quote them, say like $400, $300 for a will, they say, oh, it's too expensive, let me think about it.
But seriously, for $300, right, to get the will done, okay, even the LPA, right, I think at least it gives peace of mind to the survivor. And
Yes, correct.
It's a cost-conscious society we live in.
That's a pity, but I mean, for Ning and I, we do believe it's so important. That's why we went ahead to do it.
Yes. Stephen, just want to check, with Singapore being an aging population, the succession planning, right, is definitely very relevant. I'm sure you agree with that.
Sure.
Okay, so when one inherits a property, is ABSD applicable? Additional buyer stamp duty.
What they say on the tin speaks for itself. It's called additional buyer stamp duty. So what does that mean? That means that only when you buy additional property will there be a stamp duty. So this means that when it comes to inherited property, one does not need to pay additional buyer stamp duty or buyer stamp duty for that matter.
That's good to know.
No wonder the rich are richer. So if their grandparents are rich, right? Okay, now you know.
I would love to inherit a few properties.
Yes.
Yeah, so for that, let's say for example, if one were to hold more than 2 private properties, we know usually there's no issue. But if one person happens to own a HDB now or a private property now, but they inherit a HDB, so is there any like implications?
Well, I think for the purposes of this discussion, we should look at properties inherited or purchased after 2010, and we make an assumption that that person is a Singaporean citizen. Because as you all know, the cooling measures only more or less came into force in 2010.
Sure.
Now the thing about when it comes to inheriting property, I think conceptually what we have to take away is the fact that the government will try to balance out everybody's wealth. So the rich cannot get too rich and the poor cannot get too poor. So what does that mean? That means that if a person were to hold a HDB flat and consequently he gets inherited a private property, he will not need to dispose of the HDB flat nor the private property. He gets to keep both of them. But of course that's subject to several things. I mean, one, did he live past the MOP of the HDB flat, and eligibility criteria such as whether or not he's 35, so on and so forth.
True.
Whereas if a person already has a private property and he inherits an HDB flat, that is where the government will force you to dispose one or the other. So this is how we balance out wealth in our society through the means of property ownership.
Right, okay.
I think it's pretty fair.
Yeah,
Right?
you're
Yeah.
right. Okay, Stephen, if one owns an overseas property, you know, nowadays people buy overseas properties, right? So does a Singapore creditors have the right to claim an overseas property to recover a debt?
Yes, the creditor must obtain judgment in the Singaporean court, and then he or she will then bring the judgment to an overseas creditor, to an overseas lawyer,
Right.
and the lawyer will then enforce overseas.
Okay.
Wow.
This is something that I never know.
Yes.
I thought that if I'm having a properties overseas, right, the creditors cannot come after.
I think Singapore by and large has signed the reciprocal treaty with many countries, so it's
Right.
pretty hard to run away nowadays.
So you can run but cannot hide.
You can run but cannot
Okay,
hide, yes.
so now.
Okay, but what if the owner of the overseas property has passed on? Can the creditors still pursue the debt
Yes,
of the overseas property?
you do not need to probate the estate for
Okay.
a creditor to successfully sue the estate. So a lot of people, they think that, oh, you know what, if my father passed on, I don't conduct this probate, therefore they can't be sued. That is where they are wrong. You still can be sued.
But how long does it take for that to be effective?
Well, we are
The
looking.
duration?
Well, we are looking at, say, from the time of the cause of action. So, say, for example, like contractual claims. Let's say you and I, we are in a contract, right? And you know, I did something wrong to you in 2020, and then I subsequently passed on. So you have the date from 2020 to 2026 to sue me, or to sue my estate for that matter.
So
Yeah.
about 6 years.
About 6 years
a
for
long
contract.
time.
That is,
Correct.
Okay, so all right.
Wow.
Wow, that's interesting to
Yeah,
know.
we actually learned quite a fair bit from Stephen today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen, we're gonna ask you more questions next round.
Please,
Because of
please.
time, we know that you're very busy.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, but really thanks for sharing. I think the audience would also like to find out more. Okay, if you would like to know more than these topics, do let us know. All right. If not, you can also contact Jamie Ling, one of the business development manager. All right. Once again, I'm Ling Yap.
I'm Michelle Yap, and do remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more chats like this, and we'll see you soon.